Have the Knicks been more or less impressive than we think through their first 4 games of the season? I pulled 3 big stats that show why there's lots to be excited about and also some things to work on right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day. Whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. And your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks Daily Newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And today I've got 3 big stats, really more like 3+ big stats because some of them kind of go together, but three big stat trends, I guess let's call it, to talk about that I think paint both a picture of optimism and some things the Knicks can improve upon so far this year. Which, small sample size alert. It's only 4 games in, but we're just over a week in. I thought it would be kind of an interesting exercise to look at what's working, what's not. I know there's been, like Gavin and I certainly have had our concerns about certain things. I think that with how bad that first game was, and then how amazing the second game was, and then the last 2 games sort of following a similar script, but in opposite ways, it's been sort of a balancing act so far this year where you kind of think, oh, it seems like maybe things are just kind of middling at this point. But some of the stats suggest that things could be quite a bit better than we think, which I think the first thing is the first stat that I'm going to bring up here, which is that the starting lineup has the 5th highest point differential of any team in the league. So that's plus 10.7 points per 100 possessions. They also have the 3rd highest points per 100 possessions in the NBA at 124.2. And they are 4th in effective field goal percentage in the NBA at 59.2%. I got all those numbers off the great Cleaning the Glass, which if you've never used that site, definitely check it out. They have so many interesting insights that you can find there, with regards to especially team stats and rate stats and stuff like that. I think they're just undisputed the best site for that sort of thing. So let's get into these numbers a little bit. So again, fifth highest point differential, 3rd highest points per 100 possessions, 4th in effective field goal percentage. So I think that this just kind of illustrates the offense definitely is still figuring it out. There's already been public comments, from players like Jalen Brunson about hey, I need to get, Cat involved more. I need to do better, blah, blah, blah. But even for all that, there's still one of the best offenses in the league right now. Depending on the measure of those 3 that I just picked, they're anywhere between the 3rd and 5th best offense in the entire NBA through their first 4 games, despite all of the figuring things out. The fact that prior to last game, they weren't even really doing that much with like the Brunson and Cat pick and roll yet. The fact that they're still not, uh, dishing a ton of assists and seeming completely cohesive just yet. For all that, they're still one of the best offenses in the league. So I think it kind of underscores what we've all assumed would be the case, which is that this is a super balanced starting lineup that even on its worst night is still going to be one of the most potent units in basketball. I think that these guys just have too much talent to not put a good offense together. And it's not even just Brunson, it's not even just Cat. Mikal Bridges was a 20-something point per game scorer, at one point on the Nets. When he was tasked with doing that, like OG Anunoby, is a guy that can get you 15 in a game pretty easily just by shooting corner threes and stuff. Deuce McBride, this was the stats I just pulled were all the starting lineup, but Deuce McBride off the bench has been one of the most efficient bench players in the league so far this year, and one of the most efficient players, period. So, there's just, and Josh Hart, I think is really figuring things out as well in terms of he's taking a limited shot diet, but he's making a lot of them. And that I think is going to continue because his life is going to be a lot easier if, he's surrounded by four amazing 3-point shooters, two like total dynamos on offense in Brunson and Cat. Like his life is going to be super easy this year as long as he keeps it up. As far as, being a facilitator and, just kind of looking to stir the drink a bit. They're also shooting 40% from three as a team, which is crazy. Again, that's top three in the league behind only Cleveland and Boston, the two teams that they've lost to. And, I was kind of surprised to see that number. I feel like I did not think the Knicks were going to be that high in 3-point percentage through this point of the year because it just seems like any, game to game, it doesn't seem like they're, you know, shooting that hot from three. Certainly there was like Mikhail had his struggles in the last game, even with the like six straight misses. And yet by the end of it all against Miami, he ended up shooting 36% by just making a few more down the stretch. So maybe it's not that surprising. I don't know. Maybe it just anecdotally feels like they're not shooting as well from three, but I was expecting them to be maybe 10th or something. And yet they're third as of right now in the league in threes per basketball reference. So for whatever concerns there have been about the defense with this starting lineup, it seems like they're doing enough on the defensive end to allow the offense to carry them to wins because, that point differential at plus 11 is, again, fifth highest among five-man units in the NBA. Now, it should be noted that that's among five-man units that have qualified so far per cleaning the glass. So, mostly just starting fives that have been able to stay together injury-free through the first handful of games. But still, I mean, they're doing enough to make this work, even as they're figuring things out. And I think that's important because I'll underscore it in another stat in a minute, but there's a lot of room for improvement here where if they can improve their shot profile and improve some of their percentages, like things are only going to go up, I think, for this offense. It is going to be interesting, I think, though, to see once Precious and eventually Mitch get back, if Tibbs is willing to sacrifice some of the potency of this starting lineup on offense for a little defensive boost. I don't know. I don't know if that means, that they would start a new starting lineup because I think that this one has been really good, honestly. I don't think that I think as they continue to gel, I don't know if there's a huge reason to be like, let's completely change the identity here. But I do wonder if Tibbs is going to have more times where he prioritizes having like a Precious or a Mitch out there to get those rebounds, to, play the defense, whatever, versus having more offense out there. And there's actually a stat that I want to bring up in the next segment that'll sort of show why I think that there's something that they really need to improve upon and sort of find again for their identity that could use Mitch and Precious. So, you know what? Let's actually get to that in just a second. So, I'll be right back in to talk about offensive rebounding and why it's been for something that's been the staple of the Knicks the last couple of years. It's actually been something that I'm pretty concerned with to start this season. But first, I got to remind you that this show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You just have to visit FanDuel.com to join today. And if some of you listened to me yesterday where I crapped on the Jets and told you to bet against them on Thursday Night Football, maybe that didn't work out so good. Which, fine. Okay. They were bound to, I guess the Texans not having any weapons left did come back to bite them a little bit. But let's take a look at a different matchup here. I think this is the second week I'm going with these guys. I'm kind of thinking the Denver Broncos are a little slept on this coming Sunday. They're at the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, the Ravens just went through a pretty crushing loss against the Browns last week, so maybe they're going to come in angry. But the Broncos are kind of rolling, and Bo Nix looks really good. The Ravens' pass defense is actually not terribly inspiring. They're mostly just going to have to outgun Denver, but maybe Denver is up for the challenge. I mean, either way, Denver is plus 8.5 underdogs or plus 350 just straight up to win. So I'm kind of feeling that. I think that maybe that's a, a, a line to believe in a little bit. So go with that, give it a shot and see if it works. But this is not advice. This is just me talking. But anyway, head to fanduel.com and you can join in today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, I'm back in. And let's talk about offensive rebounding. So the Knicks' offensive rebounding rate is 18th in the NBA this season per cleaning the glass at 27.4%. That means, and they're 26th in hard number of offensive rebounds per game per basketball reference. So 18th in the NBA with that 27.4%. That's the amount of available offensive rebounds that the Knicks are grabbing. Um, and so that's not so even though they're 26th in the hard number offensive rebounds per game, which is just, you could say, hey, well, they're making more shots, that you just said they have a really good offense. So obviously there's not going to be as many offensive rebound opportunities if more of the shots are just going in. And, I think that is part of why, like 2 years ago when they were actually one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league, that they were one of the top offensive rebounding teams in the league, was because there's so many bricks for them to get their hands on and put back up. But this stat, the offensive rebounding rate, takes all that out. So, that this is just the amount for whatever shots they do miss, they're only getting their hands on 27.4% of the misses, which is becoming, I feel like, I didn't look for this ahead of time, but I feel like 5 years ago that would have been near top of the league. But I think that we're still seeing, I've mentioned this before, but Tibbs started a trend in the NBA with offensive rebounding becoming a thing that teams are looking for again. And I think the Knicks are now at the point where, ironically, they're sort of taking the plunge into the other side of like 5-out basketball, spacing, positionless, whatever. And meanwhile, the rest of the league is like offensive rebounding. Let's do that. We kind of like this idea of, getting extra opportunities and stuff. So it's a little concerning just in the fact that the Knicks have finished no lower than second in the league in offensive rebounding percentage the last 2 seasons. So if you combine that with the hyper efficient offense, like maybe they're still okay, but I do wish that they would prioritize getting those O boards a little more. I do think that once you get Precious and Mitch back, they should be able to help with that. I mean, those two guys have nonsense rebounding rates, nonsense offensive rebounding rates. I think both of them last year finished, I should have looked this up, but they both finished somewhere around 15% offensive rebound percentage, which meant that they just themselves got their hands on like 15% of the offensive rebounds that they could have, which is great because then if they're doing that and then Josh Hart can just get his hands on a few and, Cat can get his hands on a few fall into the hands of OG or Mikhail or, Brunson or whatever, you're in pretty good shape then, I think. So, maybe this is just something that'll get fixed once they get their chief two rebounders back, and whether those guys are coming off the bench and just helping the bench unit with, because I illustrate how efficient the starting lineup has been in the last segment. The bench unit, maybe not quite as much, other than Deuce McBride. So, maybe adding that sort of presence to the bench unit will be helpful and increase that overall offensive rebounding rate for the team, and then give them those second opportunities there while the starting offense is just so crazy efficient that it doesn't matter as much if they're getting the offensive rebounds. But we'll see. I will say, I think that it is something that they should improve on. They should aim to improve on. But if the offense continues getting better and better, I don't know for sure that they need to like go insane trying to get better with this. Like there's something kind of to be said for just, going with the 5-out spacing and taking, almost going back to the old way of the NBA, but before Tibbs sort of reintroduced the offensive rebound. Like so many teams in the 5-out era, like in the peak Golden State, era where they were doing what they were doing, were, kind of just abandoning the offensive rebound in favor of getting back in transition defense. And I don't totally hate that idea either, at least for that starting unit, because I think there's a lot of really talented perimeter defenders. Like obviously you have OG and Mikhail, who maybe then, by virtue of getting back on defense, I think we've already seen this play out a little bit. They're so disruptive that it might actually be more beneficial to have them go back on defense to, sort of play the transition opportunity, try to get a strip, try to intercept a pass, from the other team, whatever. That becomes more valuable than them trying to go for an offensive rebound. Um, I'm really curious. I mean, maybe I'll look more into numbers to see if there's like a number I can find about like transition turnovers generated or something, that maybe underscores that a little bit, where strategy wise, it actually makes a little more sense for that particular unit to just kind of get back and start playing coverage immediately rather than trying to crash the glass, which has been the Knicks, staple for a while. But I think finding some sort of balance there is important too. So, I think Josh Hart will continue to crash the offensive glass pretty much every time. I think that, especially once they get Mitch and Precious back, those guys, that's going to be their job is, try to stick around the hoop and get offensive rebounds, whether it's to get a putback or to kick it back out to a shooter. I think that that's going to be a priority. But maybe just specifically for like Mikhail and OG, it makes more sense for them to get back in transition after a 3-point attempt and, at least start shading that way, take a lead almost like a baseball base runner, like have their eyes towards going down the other way if the offensive rebound doesn't come in, and, just be ready to get down there and try to generate a turnover on the other side. I don't know. It's a lot of things to think about. That's why Tibbs gets paid the big bucks. And I think that they'll find their way. And I do think that even just with Precious back, I think that their offensive rebounding percentage will start going up, um, as soon as he gets back. So hopefully he's not out for too long. And then once Mitch is back in January, they'll have the option of having just a ton of rebounding on the floor if they choose to have it, which is always a great thing too, because you could potentially have Mitch out there with like Cat, who is already a great rebounder in his own right. At least from defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding maybe leaves a little to be desired. But, if Mitch is putting a big body on the biggest guy on the other team and Cat can, just kind of sky for a rebound over an opposing four, I think that's a good situation to have yourself in. It would be very reminiscent of what they sort of did with Mitch and Randall that worked so well and got Randall so many second opportunities. So we'll see about that. But I want to talk a bit about a stat that I think could go both ways as far as whether it's positive or negative here. It's about what type of shots the Knicks are taking and how they could potentially improve that to become an even better offense as the year goes on. So I'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I need to let you know about our friends over at Gametime. And I love buying my tickets through Gametime. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I've been using this feature because, the Knicks are in season now. It's time to start going to games, but it's expensive. It's not cheap getting into the world's most famous arena to try to see the Knicks play. So, you gotta save money wherever you can. Game Time Picks is great for that because you could just load up the whole map of all the seats that are currently listed and available in Madison Square Garden at any given moment, and they have their own little like fire emoji that'll show up next to a really good deal. You click on that, and then they show you uh, like what percentile of good deal that is, and all that stuff. It's very very cool. It helps you be an informed consumer and buy only the seats that that you're getting a good deal on relative to other seats that are available. It's really solid. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, what if my seat is cheaper on some other app? Well, it doesn't matter because Game Time will cover you for that. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so one last stat clump here that I found interesting through the Knicks' first 4 games. It's that the Knicks are 25th in the NBA in rim attempt frequency per cleaning the glass. So this actually I didn't find that surprising. 27.1% of their shots are at the rim. That's only good for 25th in the NBA. Uh, that is not surprising to me because it seems like they're relying a lot on the three-point shot. Just based off the eye test, and especially like last game, it just seemed like they were just shooting threes and threes and threes and threes. However, that's why it made it a little shocking when I saw the next stat. So surprisingly, they're also 21st in three-point attempt frequency at 35.1%. So 35.1% of their shot attempts are from three. I thought that would be higher. I honestly thought that was going to be closer to 40% based off how things have gone in the early goings here. So that caught me a little off guard because they were 21st in that category. Again, I figured they would probably be top 10, or maybe top 17, something like that. I don't know, 15, like around the middle of the league. I know that they haven't been attempting quite as many threes as we thought they were going to, but especially in recent games, it feels like they've been leaning on it a decent amount. But they haven't, apparently. What they have been leaning on is they're almost at the top of the league in mid range frequency at 37.7%. So they're taking a lot of mid range shots. Now, how cleaning the glass determines that is maybe worth looking into. You know, they might be counting some like longer floaters as a mid-range attempt, or like short mid-range. So still, interesting, I think, regardless to look at and see that the Knicks are taking a lot of mid-range shots and not a ton of threes and not a ton of attempts at the rim when we figured that the shot profile, with this new core would become sort of the the ideal of the NBA now of like you shoot at the rim or you shoot from three, and those are your two spots that you want to try to hit because that's where you can generate the most points. So far, it seems like they're relying on the mid range game a lot, and anecdotally, that does seem like that's where Mikal Bridges is going. Like if the 3-point shot isn't falling, he's taking some mid range shots to try to get going. Jalen Brunson, if the shot's not falling, he goes to the mid range to see if he can get some stuff falling. OG Anunoby, if the other shots aren't falling, his comfort zone is to try to dribble in and go for a pull up mid range shot. Cat, we've even seen take some longer mid range shots. When he's not, going all the way inside, or if he's not at the 3-point line, he's been throwing up some mid range shots as well. So, I guess it's not totally unsurprising, and yet I think there's some room for improvement here. I don't want to call it concerning, but like you wish that they were taking a better shot profile because they might be able to turn this, as I mentioned in the first segment, top 3 to 5 offense right now into the best offense in the NBA once they tune these things up. Um, so let's look at a couple numbers, like just to kind of figure out what they should be prioritizing more. They're only 24th in rim field goal percentage, according to Cleaning the Glass. So that's at 59.2%. But as I mentioned earlier, they're top 3 in 3-point percentage right now at 40% as a team, which is crazy. So I think as they get better at generating both types of these looks and relying on the mid range less, they should improve as an offense and get into like a class with maybe only Boston. Like, I think that being 24th in rim field goal percentage is maybe more of like less a testament of they're not good around the rim and more a testament of they're not good at generating good rim looks yet. It feels like they haven't quite, skeleton keyed this offense yet and figured out, hey, like let's get people cutting, let's work some interesting stuff in that creates more open looks than just like a regular pick and roll or someone isoing, and trying to just beat a mismatch or whatever, but then allowing the other team to come in and help and stuff like that. I don't think that they've been prioritizing that quite as much yet, like the more advanced looks. And I think we are starting to see them. Like I highlighted one in my game recap from the Heat game that was a play that I thought was like very innovative, where it was but also simple. There's like low hanging fruit for them to get better here. Like it was just a quick, like Brunson took a cat screen, kicked it over to Hart on the other side of the 3-point line. Hart looks like he's going to drive in and then keeps his head up, against the tilted defense. And as, he beats his defender and then another defender comes to help onto him, kicks it to Cat, who just gets a wide open layup on a cut from the perimeter after that pick that he had set. I think there's a lot of that available to this team because every person on this team requires a good amount of attention from the defense because they're all elite offensive players in their own regard. So, the more they can start doing stuff like that, I think that the rim percentage will get better, and then hopefully the rim attempt, you know, frequency will get higher as well to match because hopefully they'll just be like, okay, we know what we're doing here. Um, I think even though if they keep throwing it up from mid range, I think they're still in good shape. I mean, that's the crazy part. They're first in the league with 52.5% from mid range, which is a crazy number, but maybe not like unsustainable. Through 4 out of 5 members of the starting lineup are plus mid-range shooters. I already mentioned that. Deuce is also pretty good off the bench from the mid-range. So maybe they can keep this going. Maybe the mid-range just becomes a staple again. I think what I would like to see is just that, we know that they can score from mid-range, which will become more valuable in like the playoffs when teams lock in on the 3-point line and around the rim. So like at least we know that those skills are there. I just think if they want to become the best version of themselves, they can embrace the other areas of the court. But the one thing that I think can make this a bad stat is if none of this increases. Like if the rim pressure doesn't increase or if they don't start shooting a little better from around the rim or at least drawing more fouls, that could be bad because I do think that they're going to need to get better around the rim. That's like the number one concerning thing. They have it, I think that many of us at least, like I know on our like bold predictions, we were talking about this, you know, we think that a lot of people think that the Knicks should have been getting better at the rim this year just because of the increased spacing, and that hasn't really come to pass just yet. But as of right now, too, free throw wise, the Knicks are 19th in free throw rate in the NBA at 19.9, meaning they're making 19.9 free throws per 100 field goal attempts. So, like almost bottom third of the league there. You want that to be better. Like you have superstar scoring talent on this team that should be able to generate free throws. So you need that to go up. You need Brunson at the line more. You need Cat at the line more. So hopefully they're able to fine tune things, generate good looks at the rim, and start inspiring fouls to happen. Start getting to the point where guys are panicking and trying to shade over to them under the rim and ultimately fouling them. So we'll see with that, but I will say they did finish middle of the pack last year in free throw rate with actually a lower number. So they were 14th last year, and their number I believe was 19.2. So that might just be a small sample size issue. Time will tell, but either way, we'll see what ends up happening as the season goes on. Again, this is 4 out of 82 games, so small sample size, but I think it's fun to do check-ins like this periodically throughout the season and see what the stats are telling us about what's happening with the Knicks. And we'll see where things go starting tonight with another game and then continuing forward into the NBA tournament play and all that stuff. So we'll see what ends up happening. But till next time, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.